Here is the new Land Rover Defender, and I say new because this really is a brand new Land Rover Defender, because although the model was around for 70 years, it only ever really evolved into different things, and right up until the very end it really was a pretty basic machine and it showed its age. This is very, very different. It's a completely modern design. It's got retro styling that will upset some purists. I think other people will love it. But really, apart from the Defender name, that's all they share. And I'm going to show you through some of the different aspects of what the new Defender has, what it's capable of. But really, if you're here and you're a huge fan of the old Defender, chances are you might not like this one. Now, this new Defender comes with all-wheel drive, and as you'd expect, it's a very capable machine off-road. But I think most people aren't ever going to go off-road in this thing. Given that the price tag of this one is pushing 91,000 euros, and this isn't even close to the top spec version that we get here in Ireland, it's certainly a very different product to the old Defender that people are used to seeing working on farms, being a workhorse. This is probably not going to go much more off-road than the local mountain bike car park, but nevertheless, it's here. I think it's very, very cool, and I think if you've got an old Discovery, you might also quite like the look of this thing. It's going to be available with the choice of 4 engines. 2 diesel engines, both 2-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder units, with this one being the more powerful 240 horsepower version. There's also going to be a 2-litre petrol version and a more powerful 3-litre petrol version with 400 horsepower. Further down the line, there's also going to be a plug-in hybrid version, and that could do very well based on it having lower emissions and the ability to do short distances using only the batteries. If you're one of the old Defender purists, there's a good chance that you might not like this car. You might not think it's a real Defender, and you're probably not going to be won over by the styling. It's definitely different. Creating a new Defender is no easy job. It's an iconic shape. It's such a well-known car all over the world, and it's very much in that category of maybe a handful of cars when you think about iconic shapes. You've got the Defender, you've got the original Mini, the original Fiat 500, the Citroen DS, Porsche 911, but there's very few other cars that have such a characteristic shape, a shape that defines what they are, and that's what makes it quite hard when you're going to make a new Defender. On top of the fact that this also has to last, and it also now has to adhere to things like pedestrian impact and all the various legislation that new vehicles have to come to. Legislation actually that killed off the old Defender. So, let's have a look. There's definitely a lot of the old Defender in some of the lines when you look at it. It's got still a very distinctive face. These round headlights are very much part of the eyes of that face. And you've got a lot of familiar Land Rover touches, such as the way the grille is laid out. You've obviously got Defender spelled out across the bonnet. You've kind of got this dome shape here in the middle of the bonnet, and you also have these hard-wearing plastic tops of the wheel arches and on the bonnet. Now, Range Rover, Jerry McGovern and co are well used to sticking things onto bonnets of Range Rovers, but either way, it's a nice styling touch, and it breaks up what could otherwise be a very kind of blocky looking thing. Then you've got the wheel arches, these big bulging wheel arches that are squared off, quite Jeep-esque in some ways, but it looks the part. Now obviously it comes in 2 lengths, just like the old Defender. So you've got the 110, which is this longer 5-door version, and there's also a shorter 2-door 90 version. Both will also come in a commercial variant as well, which will appeal to some corporate buyers. There's a lot of really nice touches as well. You've got these vents here on the side. If you want, you can put a snorkel on it. It means that this can wade through water quite deep. You've got this upright windscreen on it, and these very square windows, along with this very defined shoulder line and big blocky door handles. Everything about this car. It's chunky, it's solid, and unlike the old kind of quite thin bodywork on the old Defenders, when this shuts with a real thud. Certainly worthy of the 90-odd thousand euro that this car costs. There's loads of chunky styling all the way through the Defender. Big square door mirrors, big solid door handles. And then there's other features as well that are quite distinctive, like these painted panels on the side. Now what these actually do is these basically just cover up where the rear door meets the rear body, and in behind is where you'll have the seatbelt points for the rear passengers. But you can also accessorize this area of the Defender. They do a luggage box that bolts onto the side, or you can also get an accessorized ladder for getting up onto the roof if you've got a large roof rack or maybe even a tent on the back. Now, the Defender's ability to go off-road has clearly had a major influence on how it looks, and there's a practical nature to some of that too. For example, on the front and rear bumpers are very short and very cut off, so there's very little overhang. That means if you are going to go off-road and say you're going up a steep incline or on a hill, bumpers aren't going to catch and potentially get damaged or come off. Now, one of my favorite features of the Defender is actually the rear and how it looks from behind. You've got this almost sheer vertical cut off rear. You've got these two sets of lights that are a modern interpretation, shall we say, of the old round lights that were on the Defender. And when you look at it from behind, you see how it comes down and then cuts out over the rear wheel arches. To ensure that punctures won't be a problem, you get a full-size spare wheel with the Defender, and it's bolted right onto the back so that A, it doesn't take up any boot space, and B, it doesn't have to be slung underneath that could potentially restrict your ground clearance. Another neat feature of the Defender is that it has a side mounted tailgate, just like the old one. It's even got a soft close function. How posh. Another nifty feature of having air suspension in the Defender is that if you need to load something bulky or heavy into the back of it, you can simply press this button and reduce the load height of the Defender, so the rear suspension just hunkers down. Equally, if you want to do it the opposite way, you can also increase it and make it higher. Just hold in the button and it will raise up to whichever height you want, or it will go all the way up, as you can see here, to its maximum height, making it much easier to put anything heavy or bulky into the rear. What's also very useful is the tow bar that at the touch of a button can electrically stow away underneath the bumper, meaning you never have to accidentally whack your shin off it as you walk behind the car. Opt for the 5-seat version, which is the much more sensible thing to do, and you get this really hard wearing plastic lining throughout the boot, which is quite useful. There isn't a hard parcel cover as such, you just get this light fabric one, which is very easy to unclip, and it's just got rubber hooks that you can undo like so and then fold it away. Very easy to make that just roll up, and then you can also lift it up and throw it in there. Because Land Rover offers a jump seat, all of the center console main controls are actually pushed forward into this control panel that's affixed to the dashboard. So that includes the gear selector, obviously your starters here, and you have all of your main sort of button climate controls and screen demisters, and also the air suspension and off-road settings. Now there's actually not a huge amount of buttons here, so they've doubled up on some things. First of all, if you twist them, that's your temperature settings, left and right. If you push in that, it also then goes for working for your heated seats. And then you also have the fan speed, so if you press that, it will option up your fan speed. And also this one then brings up your different command functions for your terrain response. So if you're going to go off-road, you can then go between your different options there. So you have mud ruts, you have all the different functions that are there. So yeah, it's quite useful just to be able to toggle through all that. You also have the air suspension here. So at the moment we've just stationary, so it's in its standard locked position. And you can increase that to the standard setting and then also increase it higher again for off-road. So it's quite useful to be able to control everything through this relatively compact control panel here. Obviously as well, you have a digital instrument display, so all versions of the Defender, pretty much with the exception of the entry-level version, all get this digital display, and it's quite nice. It goes through all the different functions, it shows you everything, it's very easy to read, and depending on what you're doing, then you have all your different sort of control modes. So as you go through them, it will also go through here, and it will show you the different functions that are selected. So that's quite useful to do. One of the things I really like is this steering wheel. So what they've done is they've left this is kind of like a metallic kind of alloy cast material, which is really nice. It just adds just a different sort of sense of ruggedness to it. So it's got this kind of metallic finish to it. And then throughout there is obviously, you know, as I said, you've got these exposed screw heads everywhere, but it's, you know, you have plastic, you have the painted door material here, and you have this quite nice material here on top. And then you've got, rather than having a big grab handle up here when you get in, it's actually the end of the dashboard. So as you open the door, as you can see, you've got this sort of very rugged panel, or not a panel, but a very rugged handle for pulling yourself up into the Defender, which is quite useful. And again, they do the same thing on the other side here. There's also, if you are going to be doing a lot of off-roading, there's plenty of places for your passenger to grab onto as well. Now there is also very much a Defender for the modern age. There is chargers everywhere in this thing. So you get USB-C, USB-A, you get a 12-volt socket here. You can get a wireless charging pad here if you wish. You've got 2 cup holders, you've got a whole load of other storage down there, but you also then have another USB charge port in there, and this is only in the front. You then have even more in the back and in the boot. Now, one final thing I'll say just before we move in, I show you in the back, is this infotainment screen. So previous older kind of contemporary Land Rovers have always had a slightly laggy system, shall we say, but this is super quick in how it works. It's really nice to use. It's, you know, obviously has a very high refresh rate. It is, you know, super quick to use and very responsive, very much what you would expect from a high-end product like this. Now, a quick look in the rear of the Defender, and you can see you have loads of space. Now, this is only the 5-seat version. If you have the 7-seat option, you can move these forward and create a bit more space for the rear. But as is, you have tons of head space. Very, very easy to, you know, for 3 adults to get in the back here. It will be a little bit tighter for whoever's in the middle, but certainly the outer seats, no issue at all. And as I said, charge points, you have absolutely loads. So the backs of the seats here have USB charge points in here. Same with the front passenger seat, so like kind of airplane style. And then further down you have 4 more power sockets here, 2 USBs and 2 12 volts. So yeah, I mean, I think 6 charge points in the rear between 3 people is more than adequate. So that's a pretty decent showing from Land Rover in that respect.
Moving from the lowest to the highest setting takes the air suspension around 20 seconds to complete. That left it perfectly set up to go off-roading, so we enlisted the help of our friends in Orange Works to put the Defender through its paces on their off-road course. The Defender has approach and departure angles of 38 and 40 degrees respectively, along with a 28-degree breakover angle. It has a maximum ascent and descent angle of 45 degrees, and that figure is the same for traversing on side slopes. And when it comes to the wet stuff, it can wade in a depth of up to 900 millimeters of water. Even on road tyres, there seemed to be nothing that could hinder the Land Rover's progress, and the multitude of different drive modes added a further layer of help. Even the experts were impressed by just how capable it was, even without the proper off-road tyres.
So the new Defender is good off-road, and let's face it, that is not going to be the biggest surprise of 2020. But what is going to probably surprise a lot of people when they do drive this new Defender is, unlike its namesake, it's very good and refined on the road. Now, it does have air suspension. All of these 110 versions get the air suspension, but this isn't wafty and floaty like perhaps, say, the new Discovery is. This is very much more firmer, a bit stiffer. It's utilitarian, I suppose, but you're not going to get tinnitus driving down from Dublin to Cork, and you're not going to risk losing any fillings over speed bumps, so that's a major plus. As for the driving position itself, well, it's very elevated. You sit high, and although most SUVs pride themselves as offering people this elevated driving position, the Defender is one of the few cars that does really actually make you feel like you're sitting well above everyone else on the road. You have a very commanding driving position. You can see the roofs of most cars, and that's even before you change it to its off-road setting, which elevates it up even higher, as we've already shown on the video. So yes, you do have good visibility for the most part. Rearward visibility, because of those three large headrests in the back and the fact that there's a spare wheel bolted on occupying half of the rear window, isn't very good. And certainly if you want to be able to see better, it's worth considering the ClearSight rear view camera system, which uses a camera embedded into the shark fin antenna in the rear, and it can actually feed a live display into your rear view mirror if you don't want to use it as a rear view mirror. Our car doesn't have it. It's not the end of the world, I'll be honest, because if you do need to reverse, the reversing cameras that you get are actually very, very good anyway. So it's a nice to have, but when you do glance behind, it's no problem seeing cars that are further away in the distance, but it's a lot harder to work out what's immediately behind you. So some people might just prefer that. That aside, you've got these huge door mirrors, which do give you very good visibility. Same on the other side. You do have a fairly slender A-pillar, so it's not massively chunky, and you sit quite close to the windscreen, and you have this relatively upright windscreen as well. So certainly from that aspect of it, it's fine. Now there's two diesel engines that you get with the Defender. This is the more powerful of those. It's the 240 horsepower version, and it's very, very good. I have to say, I have no complaints. There's more than adequate amounts of power, even though I'm the only person in the car right now, and yes, I'm not towing anything, but it absolutely sails along. We're doing 80 kilometers an hour right now, and the engine isn't even hitting 1500 RPM. It's got loads of torque. Crucially though, it's not that noisy. Now in the past, some of the Ingenium engines that we've had, they certainly had a bit of a diesel rattle to them. This doesn't. It's very well insulated, I have to say. So that's a plus. In terms of fuel economy, which also hasn't always been the best with Ingenium engines, this is actually quite good. On a longer motorway drive, I saw 9.5 litres per 100 kilometres, and I would say if you're doing a longer term, it would be better again. Granted, this is actually a brand new engine. We've barely got 1,000 kilometers on this test car, so I would imagine that it will probably improve with a bit more time as everything beds in. But I have to say, as is, our initial first impression, very, very good. So it goes off-road and it does well on a motorway. Really though, I see most of these Defenders being used in these sort of scenarios. Driving around urban streets slowly, because that's what most people buy SUVs for these days. I don't know why, but that's what they do. So how does it perform in this scenario? Well, mostly quite good. The one thing I would say about the Defender is that it's not too big. I would like if it was 5% smaller. And what I mean by that is you're conscious of how big this thing is when you're squeezing through gaps. For example, it takes up the full width of a lane on most roads. And if you're on a motorway, for example, that means you don't have that much room when other road users are perhaps weaving or doing a quick lane change. It takes up the whole space. So in that respect, I would like if it was just a little bit smaller. I mean, 5% we're talking here, not a great deal. But anyway, it is what it is. This is the size of it. It's one of the few complaints I would have about it. For the most part, it's very, very good. It's easy to maneuver around town. You do have very good visibility. So, actually seeing what's going on all around you is quite good. And that's even before you actually revert to using the array of cameras that are on this thing. You have so many cameras, you won't know where to look on this thing. And they're all very good quality. They work very well. Even at night, actually, the backup camera is pretty clear. So that's a good thing. So yeah, I've done quite a bit of driving all this week in this, really to find, to look for the niggles, look for the things that will annoy you. And as I said, other than it being just a little bit big in certain scenarios, they've done a top job with this thing. They really have. It goes off-road better than you would ever want to go off-road. The thing is, they have over-engineered it in that respect, even on road-going tires, I would add. But what really surprised me and impressed me the most was just how refined this is. So on a motorway, it just cruises along very comfortably. It's not super wafty like a Range Rover is, so the ride quality is definitely firmer, but it's not firm in an old Defender sense at all, at all. Just forget about the old Defenders. If you had to go any amount of distance in an old Defender, it was just awkward. They were never designed for that. Let's be honest, they were a workhorse. This thing is very much a 21st century, go anywhere, do anything. It will happily drive to Aldi and Lidl and do the shopping. As equally then, if you turn around the weekend and go, hey, we're going to go to Connemara or we're going to go to Namibia, it will do all of these things. And that is really what the crux of it comes down to. This is an SUV that is as much capable of fulfilling your lifestyle needs as it is actually being able to do all of the things that the brochure suggests it can do. And that is why I really like this thing. Anyway, hope you really enjoyed this. I hope it was informative. If it was, please let us know. Give us a thumbs up. Get involved in the comments below. We'd love to know what you think about this Defender, and maybe what you think of it, in comparison to the other Defender, or maybe you'd have something else other than this. There's obviously the Wrangler, there's a Land Cruiser, there's any amount of pickups you can do. But let's have an argument in the comments section. Get involved, let us know. Please, as I said, give it a thumbs up. We'd really appreciate if you could share the video and subscribe to the Complete Car YouTube channel. And that's it. Thanks for watching.